Starting the last year in מכירת, finish the topics that I was planning on speaking about. Today we're going to be talking about selling businesses on Pesach. The businesses that are being discussed, that are being sold, are mashke selling places. And for that you need a little bit of introduction in Russian alcohol distribution laws in the times of the Tsar. The way it worked was as follows. Each city had a specific person, or he was the boss in charge of selling mashke and beer in that town. All alcoholic beverages had to be sold under the control of a specific person. His place was called the Kantar. He was his office. That was his office. The Atkup was the name of his division, and he was called the Atkupchik, the one who would be holding this right. He would have to pay a rate, a tax, every year, and that tax would be what would give him the permit to sell mashke and beer in this specific city. Now, he was not selling directly. He was officially the wholesaler for the city and for the villages around the city. And who would be the ones that actually sell it to the people was the shankers, the smaller bars and pubs in town. They were the ones who were in charge of selling to people. So the way it worked was he would produce it, or he would buy it from other people, and then he would sell it to the shankers. He would, as the one who was in charge of the one who held the contract, he held the rights to sell it. Legally, he held the rights to sell it. Nobody else was allowed to sell in town, wholesale. He would determine at what price he sells it to the pubs and at what price they will then sell it to the customers. He would not sell it he would not get paid for the mashke up front. He would give it on credit, and then as it was sold, he would get paid. And later we're going to see how exactly that worked. There was a discussion in halacha. So the being that legally you had that right to sell the mashke in town, you also had an obligation to make sure that your place continuously supplies the people. So if you're a shanker, if you had a pub, so maybe you could get away with closing it for a week, you would lose money. But if you were the main guy distributing mashke to the whole town, you had no legal rights to shut down for 8.5 days, 9 days, to shut down your operation. Especially, and this is the question of Tzemach Tzedek, the question that came up, it happens to be the Goyish holiday came out right around there, and all the Goyim needed to buy mashke, and there would have been a crisis, maybe a pogrom, I don't know. You never know what could happen in these places if there was no mashke available. That was how it worked. Now, we know when it comes to selling a business on Shabbos, there's the Alter Rebbe has a tshuva in Siman Beis regarding Shabbos about how to sell a pub, a shank on Shabbos, for Shabbos. And the way the Alter Rebbe describes for Shabbos, he says you go over to the guy before Shabbos and you tell him, if I would hire you to be my worker for Shabbos or for selling in my store, I would give you, let's say, for every bottle of mashke that you would sell, you would get $1. For every cup of beer you'd sell, you'd get 25 cents, whatever it is. And how much does he usually sell the bottles of mashke for? $10 he would sell it, and the cups of beer for $2 or $3, whatever it is. So then he'll tell him, listen, I'm going to right now sell to you all the mashke that I have. I make a cheshbon. I have 100 bottles of mashke at 200 bottles of mashke, and I have them at 100 bottles, 200 bottles, whatever, at $10 a piece. That's the price I would sell them. Now, I'm not hiring you as a worker. I'm actually selling it to you. But I'm not going to sell it to you at $10 a bottle, because then you're not going to be able to sell it for $10 a bottle. You're not going to make any money. I'm selling it to you for $9 a bottle. So you're going to make $1 for each bottle. I'm going to sell you these big vats of beer that have a certain amount of cups. I'll sell you each cup, instead of $2, for $1.75. Now, comes after, now we make an inventory how much we have in Erev Shabbos. It's 100 bottles. Motzei Shabbos, you come back and do an inventory. If it was a good day, there was a good Yom Tov Chagah for the Goyim, he sold 30 bottles, so he's supposed to pay not $300, he's supposed to pay $270, because he's paying $9 a bottle. And he sold them for $10 a bottle. So he made $30 off this sale. And that's what Alter Rebbe says you should do it. Now, and not only that, the Yid could actually go and oversee the Goy as he sells the mashke to make sure that he's not stealing from him. But that only works on Shabbos, but that Yisoid applies also on Pesach. The same city of Raman is going to come up again in the Tzemach Tzedek. Let's discuss what happened in the time of the Alter Rebbe. A certain city that asked the shearit Yehuda, the brother of the Alter Rebbe, how to deal with selling these businesses to a Goy on Pesach. And that's in page 70 in your book, shearit Yehuda Siman Yud Beis. It starts with Oidas HaKantar regarding this main wholesaler distributor office to people. The way he says it has to be done is the Yid will sell to the Goy all the mashke with the Mechira Gemura together with the room where the mashke is there. That means it's the store. Now the second point is you make the same cheshbon like we saw in Hilchos Shabbos, that you sell him at a discount each bottle at a certain discount. However, you have to make sure when you tell it to him, you have to be careful how you say it. You're not telling him, I'm selling it to you at $10 a bottle and you're going to get a dollar percent profit from each bottle. Rather, I'm selling them to you for $9. And you could sell them for $10 because the price was already set by you can't change the prices. And the third one is that he has to be able to sell it for a day or two after Pesach also. And the reason for it is that he should be considered a koine and not a person who's holding a pekadon. If the guy is only holding a pekadon, then it's not enough. The Yid still has bailos on it. It's a mechira gemura. Obviously, it's done according to the shtar of the Alter Rebbe, was sold to a guy properly. Yeah, and then after Pesach, if the guy goes and comes back and wants to sell it back to the Yid, and they're not going to deduct the dollar from each bottle, it's just going to go back to him. Maybe,
What do you mean they're not going to deduct the dollar from each bottle?
Because it's a trick, right? The goal is that the Yid should make all the money. So he's going to look at it and say, okay, shkayach, you sat in my office and worked for this amount of time, and really I should give you this amount of money. But Poel, maybe he didn't sell, maybe he only held it, maybe he wasn't the one that was in the store, they had to pay other employees, v'chulu. So the business went back to the owner the way it was. He said, as long as the guy should get at least me'at revach kanohug. In the Mechiras Chametz is a built-in profit for the guy, whether he sells or he doesn't sell, at least for trying to sell. So let's say if this guy who owns the business is the guy who's going to he's not going to be the one standing and selling. There's other workers who are selling. So then at the end of the day, he's not going to want to complete the sale. The guy is not going to want to come back now and start dealing with the store and seeing how much was actually sold and how much wasn't to make the cheshbainis. He's going to give back the whole business and say, just like a regular Mechiras Chametz, give back the whole business and goodbye. And then at least he has to make a certain amount of profit. That's how the shearit Yehuda says. In short, that's how you do it. So it's pretty much the same idea as the Shabbos sale, at least l'chatchila, that's the way it should be done. The only difference is over here, the Yid is not allowed to hang out in the store when that happens. There is a tshuva of the Tzemach Tzedek Siman Memtes that is extremely long and discusses this whole topic. That's on page 122. The Part of the story you already know, because that is regarding the same city of Raman, which was discussed in the other chuvas, where they sold the chametz, but they didn't tell the... So you know the way it worked over there was, but it's the same city what happened over there. The way it worked was that this wholesaler would sell it to the local pubs at the price of 3.5 ruble a bottle. That was his wholesale price in town. Out of town, the further you are from the city, the cheaper it went, as opposed to how it is today, because in the city there's much more customers. Outside the city, you couldn't sell for that high of a price. He would sell it for much less. It could be, would even be a ruble and a half per bottle. And the shankers would then sell it to the people for more. Now, the way they set it up was that the Yid who holds the rights to sell it, the document to sell it, he didn't sell the rights to sell. He didn't give the guy also the legal power. He owns he paid the tax. So he has a 1 year, so to speak, permit. He didn't sell the permit to the guy. Why? The guy didn't want to pay the tax. He didn't sell the permit to the guy. The question is, how do we get around it? If the Yid is going to sell it at the lowest price that's available, which is 1.5 rubles per bottle, the Jew is going to lose a lot of money, because he could have sold it for 3.5 in town, most of the bottles. If he sells it at 3.5 rubles a bottle, which is the full price that he sells it, then ends out being that he is getting profit from Isurei Hano. And even if he sells it to him fully on Erev Pesach at that price, it's tzarich chiyun if it works. That's how Tzemach Tzedek starts the question. That is the question. What was the question of the rabbi, if you want to know what the rabbi actually asked? If you look in footnote 8, he has the question. The question was as follows. First of all, that the wholesaler didn't have exactly a set price list. He would sell to the, Tzemach Tzedek changed a little bit the question, he would sell to the shankers at 10 ruble a bottle. Some people outside the city would be depending on what price. If he would sell directly from his warehouse to private residents, it means he would cut out the shankers. It doesn't have a set price. It would be whatever he decides as a wholesaler. If somebody would buy a bunch of cases of mashke, he would give him a discount, which would sell for cheaper. If the person was his friend, he would sell to him even for cheaper. What was the minig? The minig was every year they would sell it to the goyish manager who ran this whole operation. Because he knew everything. He knew how much it goes to this city and to that city, and how much to sell at wholesale, how much to sell at retail. He ran the whole operation. That you already know from the other tshuva, that the guy was the one who ran everything. And he would be the one that would actually stand in the business and sell all the mashke, even though the tax, the permit was not on his name. He was the one who was standing in the store. You can't sell it to him everything at a global price, because there's no way of really calculating what the real numbers are. And then the question that the Rav has is, if you're going to sell it according to the out-of-town prices, which is much less, and then the guy you sell it to the guy at 5 rubles a bottle. And now the guy is going to sell it in town for 10 rubles a bottle to the shankers. The guy is making a lot of money. And the Yid is losing money off it. And if you're going to sell it to the guy at 10 rubles a bottle, which is the actual price that is being done, then the Yid is having hanoeh from Isur Chometz. Now, why the guy has a right to sell in town? He's not selling based on his own. He doesn't have a permit on his name. The only way he's able to sell is because he's relying on the permit of the Yid. If he's relying on the permit of the Yid, means the reason why the Yid is able to sell it to him and he's going to sell it weiter is based on these 8 days of the permit. And these 8 days of the permit, the Yid is making money off it. If he is making money off it, he is mishtaker b'isurei hano. He is receiving profit from something which isurei hano. So the Tzemach Tzedek goes in different angles how to deal with this problem, or the various questions which come up, and that's what exactly we're going to be dealing with today. The Siman Memtes is the main one, and then there is Siman Pei Zayin in this print, which is really Siman Tzadik Beis, I think, and that was a response. The Rav asked a question afterwards in the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek then responded back to him. So it's basically one long tshuva and one short tshuva on this question, on this thing. Okay, so let's start with what the Tzemach Tzedek has to do with this topic. So he says like this. He starts by saying is that if you're going to sell it to him at a cheap price, and you're relying on the guy that after Yom Tov he's going to give him a sale. That means he's relying on the guy. The guy is not going to steal from him. Then it's neither the shari. Seems like it's mutter. Why? And the reason is simply, even though that the yid is relying on the guy, that the guy is going to give him the full profits, and he also knows he's going to get the full profits, we still don't say that he didn't have in mind to sell it to him. We don't say there's a problem with the Mechira, and all he wanted to do is to hire him as a worker. Why? Because we have the Svara of the Trumas Hadeshen that you are allowed to sell, if you do a Mechira Gemura, you're allowed to sell for much cheaper, even if you know that afterwards the guy is going to come and give it back. But the problem with the Trumas Hadeshen is, what's the whole Yesod of the Trumas Hadeshen is based on the fact that he says that this is based on Matana, the Yesod is based on Matana Nas Lahachzir. Matana Nas Lahachzir really works. Ela Mai by Chametz, we were machmer, midin chumra, that we're not going to do Matana Nas Lahachzir. But being that the whole reason why we don't do Matana Nas Lahachzir and Chametz is only midin chumra, not midina, therefore, if it's only a matana, it's also. But anything which is similar to a matana like this one, which is a sale at a cheap price, and he's going to buy it back afterwards, is still mutter. But the Pri Chadash brings the Knesset Agdela, the Knesset Agdela brings the Radbaz, and the Radbaz, the way the Pri Chadash quotes him is, a matana nas lahachzir by chametz is not asur mitzat chumre. It's asur mi'ikar dedina, mi'ikar din it's asur. Therefore, how can you say that you're able to sell in a mechire which is similar to matana if you're going to follow Pri Chadash? You have a problem. You can't just sell it at a low price and then knowing that the guy is going to give you the higher price. You have the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch does not paskin like the Pri Chadash. Pri Chadash after the does not paskin like the Radbaz. The Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Trumas Hadeshen. And the Alter Rebbe in Tafim Ches Sivav also paskins like the Trumas Hadeshen. That essentially it works in a Mechira Gemura. If you do a proper Mechira, you could sell to a guy at a low price. And if the guy comes after Pesach and gives it back to him, we don't consider it as a reversal of the sale of Matana Nas Lahachzir. We rather consider it as a new Matana. The Yid sold it to the guy. The guy wants to give it to the Yid. He's giving him a new Matana, so it's not a problem. It's no Bal Yeroy, Bal Yemotza. So therefore, it seems that if you do a Mechira Gemura at a low price, knowing that the guy is going to give it to you afterwards, it's still mutter, even though it's similar to Matana Nas Lahachzir. But the Matana Nas Lahachzir, even if you want to say that Matana Nas Lahachzir completely is a problem, the Tzemach Tzedek says, it's not really similar to Matana Nas Lahachzir. What's the classical Matana Nas Lahachzir everybody knows about? Lulav. He says, by Lulav, we say Matana Nas Lahachzir. Why is that? Because everybody knows that nobody wants to be without his Lulav. So if he gave it to you as a present, he obviously gave it to you as a Matana Nas Lahachzir. And it's Umdinu de Muchach, they didn't want you to keep it. He wanted to get it back. But over here, by Chametz, maybe the Yid does want to sell it. Ultimately, his goal is to sell. He's not hoarding mashke. It's not his business. His business is buying and selling. He wants to make money. So if he's able to sell it at a good price, maybe he made a cheshbon after Pesach, or even he's going to think in his mind, you know what, it was a good deal. I did get rid of, it was a good chagah for the goyim. I got rid of a full 2 truckloads of mashke. So even though I didn't make as much money as I would have made if I would have sold them bottle by bottle, independently, but B'Poel right now I have a nice chunk of cash, so maybe there is. So there's no umdina de muchach that this sale at that lower price that afterwards would reverse could be compared completely to a matana amnas lahachzir.
Isn't that better?
Huh?
Isn't that better?
What?
If he doesn't want to take it back, that's
Yes, for sure better. Yes, I'm saying. So that's why mikara, even if you do it, you can't say it's mamash like matana amnas lahachzir. If he says mamash like matana amnas lahachzir, then it's asur. But if you say it's not mamash like matana amnas lahachzir, why is it not mamash like matana amnas lahachzir? Because maybe the Yiddish will want us to do it. So therefore, it's not such a problem. Essentially, unless we have a umdana de muchach or we have a gilui das that's clear that the Yid clearly does not want to sell it, is only doing it as a trick, it should work. More so, the Tzemach Tzedek writes in the pnim of the Shuvah that what the Radbaz says that matan amnas lahachzir and chametz doesn't work, midine, the Tzemach Tzedek says, I didn't find it in the Radbaz, what the Knesset Gdela says the name of the Radbaz. Because the Tshuva of the Radbaz, the Tzemach Tzedek first quotes, does say that he's masking, he says also Ketumas Hadeshin is Medin Chumre. Afterwards, if you look in the footnote, there's a lot of times in Tzemach Tzedek, this Kisvei Yada was written after the Tshuva, on the bottom of the Tshuva. Afterwards, Tzemach Tzedek says, after a certain amount of time, I did find a Radbaz that clearly says that it is Medina. But let's put that aside for a second. That's the second reason that Tzemach Tzedek says that Radbaz himself, I didn't find that he writes as Medina, it's only Medina Chumra. And Bechlal, if you look at the Pri Chadash who quotes the Radbaz, the Knesset Gdela quotes the Pri Chadash who quotes the Knesset Gdela quotes the Radbaz, Pri Chadash explains that the reason is because we're dealing with a T'nai. You're making a condition that you're not able to be mekayim at the moment. You're selling it to him, and you're selling it to him on a condition that's going to be somewhat of a condition that's going to come back to you afterwards. Right now, you cannot be mekayim that night because you're going to be over in Bal Yeroy, Bal Yamatzah. So therefore, being that it's a Tanai that you cannot be mekayim, so the mechira was never chal because of the Tanai. Being the mechira was never chal because of the Tanai, so you're still over in Bal Yeroy and Bal Yeroy, Bal Yamatzah. And the Tzemach Tzedek says that Yesoid is also wrong. Why? Because if he proves it also, that if you are mekayim, if you do a Tanai, it's ein biyadei la'asosei right now, but afterwards the Tanai is fulfilled, then it works the mafreya, and you're not over on Bal Yeroy, Bal Yamatzah. And it's considered, even if you do matan amnas lahachzir, if the Tanai will be fulfilled, it will be considered the matan l'mafreya to the goy for the whole Yom Tov. Now, it just happens to be that this idea that we mentioned before, that about whether matan amnas lahachzir and chametz is medina, is chumra, or it's medina, if you look in the Sheareit Yehuda, at the end of Siman Yud, which is on page 68, by the way, he says clearly that if you do a kinyan of a shtar without, just hold the place we're going to go back to, if you do a kinyan of a shtar without kesef to the goy, then it doesn't help at all because that's considered a matana amnas lahachzir. And he says that even though Trumas Hadeshin writes that it is a chumre and not medina, still in all, ani shamaiti mimoiri ochi rabbeinu agon zechron livrocha nishmas Eden sheyesh boy isur ba'yiro ba'yimotzi min ha'toira. And he says ve'eni zoicher time ahead. I don't remember what the Alter Rebbe's reasoning was, but Alter Rebbe did hold that it's mamish isur ba'yiro ba'yimotzi min ha'toira, not like a Trumas Hadeshin. And he explains the chayra has to do because the matan amnas lahachzir, where the hanoah that's received as a result of this matana does not go to the mekabel matana, but rather goes to the noisna matana, and especially in this scenario where the mekabel hamatana will have zero hanoah from it, that's definitely considered a harama, and it's a problem. Now, the Tzemach Tzedek continues in Ois Beis that he asks the question, the discussion then goes into the shit of the Lechem Mishnah. Lechem Mishnah says that when you do a mechiras chametz, it has to be a mechira gemura without any t'nai. If you do any t'naim, it doesn't work. The question Tzemach Tzedek continues and asks, why is it that if the t'nai is not miskayim, why if the t'nai is miskayim, you're still over in Bal Yeroy, Bal Yamatzah? Maybe you should work l'mafreya. what's the proof for it? In a get, huh? If you're doing a get, you have, if someone gives a get al tanai, and she got married, and she had a kid, and the tanai was niskayim down the line. Now, if the tanai was not miskayim, you have a problem. If the tanai was miskayim, then the kid is lemafreya kosher, not a mamzer. So if so over here also, if the tanai was niskayim, what's the problem? Why do you say bal yirah? Why is the issue of bal yirah bal yimotze? And the Tzemach Tzedek goes weiter and says, if you give him a tonish, not a mnas lahachzer, you stam give him a tonish without specifying what it is, and you don't say it's a matana gemura, it's even worse than matana mnas lahachzer. Why? Because if the yid would give all the chametz as a matana to the goy, and he would not specify it's a mnas lahachzer, not specify what it is for, we would think that in his heart he's not even fully giving a matana. If he gives a mnas lahachzer, at least we know it's a full matana, but it's a mnas lahachzer. At least a full matana, partially. But if he does it just as matana, we have a chashash. Maybe he bichlal didn't have in mind to do anything. And over here, that's not a matana. Here it's a shtar with a price. This proves that it's not stam a matana, it's mamash mechila gemura. And therefore, we have no issue of dvarim shebalev. So therefore, why is it that according to certain opinions, he says it doesn't make sense to say that if there is a matana, amnas lahachzir, it means matana with a tanai, it shouldn't work l'mafreya. And Mechira al Tanai for sure should work. Now, if you look in you don't have to flip pages. If you look at the end of this tshuva, there's over there's what's called the Madura Basra to this. In the end of this tshuva, there's a Madura Basra to these paragraphs. And over there, the Tzemach Tzedek adds a point that's not here. That even though he says in Isur Eishasish, he clarifies this idea. In Isur Eishasish is such a chomer dika Isur, like by a get, we say that Amnas Lahachzir is moyo. If they give a get, has to be the paper of the husband. If it's given to the husband as a matana Amnas Lahachzir, she is megureshes. Why then, by a chametz, are we going to say the matana Amnas Lahachzir doesn't work? Elamai, the Tzemach Tzedek there says, towards the end of the tshuva, not in the Hisafis, in the end of the tshuva, it's printed as a guf of the tshuva, he says that by a goy, one of the reasons is, by a goy, we have to look at what the goy is thinking. If a goy is being told that it's a matana, Amnas Lahachzir, he will never consider it a real matana. In his mind, you just fooled him, and therefore it doesn't work. That's an Ois Beis. Ois Gimel, Tzemach Tzedek goes, and he says that maybe it would be better if he sells it at the full price, not at the lower price. The lower price, we have a shaila, maybe it was not the full mechira. Sells it at the full price. And he has in mind that if the guy would want to fulfill the mechira, he's going to fulfill the mechira. Why would he be happy? For him, from his point of view, from the seller's point of view, it's great. He just made all the money that he wanted. He has no reason not to sell it to the guy. The problem is of Mishtakar B'Surei Ano. This is where Tzemach Tzedek goes to the whole discussion. What's Mishtakar B'Surei Ano? He says if you sell it at such a high price, what does it look like? Similar to a case of somebody who rents his house or rents his oven to a guy to bake chametz in it. The Taz in Siman Tov Nun holds that according to a bunch of days, there is no Isser in such a scenario. But so over here, there would not be Isser, right? Because all you're doing is you're renting out to him the property. The fact that you're receiving some hanoah from it is not enough of a direct hanoah to make it Isser. And the chametz itself is fully sold to the guy. So therefore, the guy is not working for a yid, he's working for himself, and you are allowed to have a hanoah from the money. But we paskin like the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch does not paskin like the shit that the Taz brings. The Alter Rebbe paskins like that also, not like that. That you're not allowed to rent out a oven to a goy to bake chametz on Pesach. And it's mashma from Taisvis. There's also the Chatchila, and it's also mashma from the Ran. And even though the Rashba that we mentioned in the previous shir holds that the Isur to receive schar from renting out a place is only if you're standing and watching over it. But if you're just renting and going away and not being next to it, it's mutter. He says, the Tzemach Tzedek says, Tzorich Yun, and the Shita of the Rashba, it makes no sense that it only works when you're present and if the one who's renting it out is not there, then he's allowed to be mishtaker in Isuria. No, why? Because if you look in Yerideya, Siman Kuf Lamed Gimel, regarding the Isur of Yain Nesach, you're not allowed to rent a donkey to a goy if you know that he's going to carry Yain Nesach on it, to bring Yain Nesach on. You're not walking with a donkey. Still Asur. So it's clear, it's not like the Rash, but it's only if you're standing over there. So that doesn't work. So we can't say that we can't use the heter that because you rented it out, you're allowed to be mishtaker b'surena. That doesn't work. Now, you're going to say, you know what, let's do avla. Why? Let's do it with a few days before, a few days after. Because, and this is something that the Bis Yosef brings in the name of the Agur. The Bis Yosef brings in the name of the Agur that you are allowed to do b'avla before Pesach. And Tzemach says, it still wouldn't help you over here. Why? Number one, the Pri Chodesh and the Bach say that it's not one day before Pesach. It's got to be like 30 days before Pesach. Number two, from the Gemara it's mashma that even b'avlo ishtaker b'surah is also aser. And that's the Gemara about Yain Nesach, not about chametz. And even though you're going to tell me, well, Yain Nesach is stricter than chametz, because in Yain Nesach, even b'di'evid, you're not allowed to have any enjoyment from the money, and over here you're not allowed. Over here it doesn't say that. But ultimately, you're not going to build a mechira based on the b'di'evid. L'chatchila, it's for sure aser to receive schar from Isurei Hanoah, even b'avlo. So we're back to the same problem. If you're going to sell it to him at a full price, because if you sell it to him at a lower price, you have a problem. The mechira was not a really good mechira. Sell it to him at the full price, you have a different problem. That you're mishtaker b'Isurei Hanoah. Another point, a much stronger point is, over here, the vast majority of the profit that you're making is not from the rental. When you rent out a donkey, you're not making any profit from the Yain Nesach. You're making a profit from the donkey. When you rent out your oven, you're not making any profit from the bread. You're making a profit from renting the oven. Over here, what you're renting him the store for a week is bavkis. The big money you're making is from the sale of mashke. So this is much stricter than the donkey. Over here, you're not receiving hanoah indirectly, you're receiving straight hanoah from it. So even though on Shabbos we say that avlo is mutter, you can't compare Shabbos to chametz, to Isurei Hanoah. On Shabbos, what's the issur of not receiving schar Shabbos? It's a shvach issur. The whole issur of schar Shabbos is a gzeira. Gzeira shema yichtiv. So you're going to say gzeira shema yichtiv. The same chacham made gzeira shema yichtiv did not make a gzeira on avlo. But over here, it's a complete issur. If it's a complete issur, havla is not going to help you. So the fact, even if you're going to add a day or two before for renting out the business, even 30 days before, it's not going to help you because it's not, you're not having behavla. The whole thing is from the chametz. And even if there are certain shittas that from there you can prove that midei raisa it's mutter in Isurei Hanoah to do behavla. Still, no, it's clear that midei rabbanan it's for sure aser. And if you want to bring a raya from the Agur, still want to focus on the Agur, it's still not going to work. Because the Agur is talking about a case where you're renting out a house to a guy that you know that he might bring chametz into there. Then it's mutter. Over here, you're renting out, forget about the mashkets for sure, aser. Over here, even renting out the room, you're not renting out a house to a guy where you have a chashash that he probably will bring chametz unless he is gluten-free. Over here, you're talking about that you're renting him the store, and the store has all the chametz inside of it. So you're renting it with a clear idea that this store is going to be used for chametz. So even the rental price, you have a problem of Isurei Hanoah. And Ois Daladi clarifies it even stronger. That over here, you're not only receiving hanoah from the schar, like we said before, that we explained that receiving hanoah from the rental is asur b'avla, like we said until now. Over here, you're receiving profit directly from the chametz. Why? Because you're selling the chametz at the highest price. And even though the chametz belongs to the guy, when is the guy selling the chametz? On Pesach. So therefore, you're having hanoah from this chametz on Pesach. That according to the Rivash, a yid having hanoah from chametz of a guy on Pesach is also midiraisa. To sell Isurei Hano directly is also Asur Midiraisa. A Yid is not allowed to sell Chametz on Pesach. And the money that you make from selling Chametz on Pesach, it's a machlokes if it's Asur Midiraisa or Asur Midirabanan, it's for sure Asur. Lechatchila. And the money might be Asur even B'di'evet, Midirabanan. So therefore, to sell it at the full price is not going to work. Because the money from the rental, you can't do Bavlo, because it's Mamash Isurei Hano. And you know that the chametz is there, and the money from the profit from the actual bottles, the suffix deraisa, because you're having profit from the actual chametz, it's for sure aser. Question is it aser mideraisa and b'di'evet mideraisa you keep the money, or it's aser mideraisa and aser you're not allowed to even keep the money, or maybe at least that midrabanan is for sure aser to keep the money. So there's no way to go around it. So therefore, and then the Tzemach Tzedek goes even further. Maybe it's not exactly as if I'm standing with my own chametz and selling my own chametz on Pesach. That's to compare the goy standing and selling the chametz and me getting profit from it is not exactly like me standing with the bottles and selling my own chametz. That's too extreme to compare it to. But I'm still having hanoah from the chametz of the goy with another added point of view. Kederech hanoah. What's the regular way of me having hanoah from these bottles of mashke? Not by drinking them, by selling them. That's my derech hanoah. Now that the goy is selling it, I'm also having the same hanoah. Derech hanoah. If it's derech hanoah, it's still aser. So now you're going to come and tell me, well, Mechire, it should only be, why are we going away from Mishtaker B'Surei Hano? We should stay away from Mishtaker. We should say, maybe it is Mishtaker B'Surei Hano. Well, if you say it's not mamish, like selling, like standing and selling, so it's again, you're only making profit from it, but you're not actually selling it. So let's go back and compare it to renting out a house. They're going to say this is mutter. Tzemach says you can't compare it. By renting out a house, again, you're not making money from the chametz. You're making money hanoah b'derech grama, indirect hanoah, and it's not kederech hanoah. Over here, by a mechire, you're making money kederech hanoah in a direct fashion, and therefore, if you're going to take the full price of it, it's much stricter than stam somebody who makes profit from Isurei Hano. Because over here, you're mamish receiving hanoah from the chametz itself, kederech hanoah. So therefore, we're still stuck with the problem. How are you going to sell this? So he says at the end of Ois Hey, he says the way to sell it l'chayra is if you also sell him the permit for those days during Yom Tov. You're not going to just sell him the chametz. You're not going to just rent him out the place. You're also going to sell him the rights of the permit to sell it. And then you're not having any hana because you were not able to sell it on Pesach. You didn't have a permit. You sold the permit to somebody else. Who has the right to sell on Pesach? The guy. You have no right to sell on Pesach. So you sold all your chametz before Pesach, at the time when you did have the permit. And you sold the permits. So now, all your hanoah all happened before you sold it at Pesach in the morning. All your hanoah happened then, or the night before, you'd base. And you're not having any hanoah and Yom Tov from the chametz of the guy, because he's not selling for you, he's selling for himself, he has his own thing. But still, lav dafka, it's completely mevatel l'chashash l'iraisa. So, the Tzemach Tzedek has to go and develop this new idea of selling the shtar together with selling the permit together with selling the chametz and renting out the store. And that's where it starts in Ois Vav. He says when you give him when you rent out your permit to the person, it's not the same as renting out a house. Why is that? What could we compare it to? There's a din in Hilchos Shabbos in Siman Reish Mem Hey. If you rent out then Yidden had the rights to collect taxes. They would collect the taxes, they would stand, they would import, export, whatever it was, they would collect the taxes. And Shabbos was a day when there was other things going on. The Yid didn't want to lose the profit for Shabbos. What did he do? He would rent out his permit to the guy for Shabbos. That's in the Alter Rebbe says it's not a problem. Why? He says you can't compare it to masker, to the one who rents out a merchetz, so that's also. Because by renting out a merchetz, you're renting out something which is guf ha'isur. The actual isur is there standing and present. The merchetz, you're making money from people taking baths on Yom Shabbos. The guf ha'isur is there. But renting out the permit to collect taxes, you're not keeping the guf. The guf of the merchetz is not kayim anymore. There's no guf merchetz over here. The Yid, by him giving it up, he's complete siluk. He's completely removing himself from this business deal. From this business deal. Why? Because the permit is gone. He has no right to do it anymore. So he says, but still we have a different problem, because even if you're going to say that it's fine to rent out a permit, to lease out your permit, the problem is that Taz also thought of this idea, and the Taz gives two problems. Problem number one, you can't sell something shalei b'laylam. And even, he's talking about renting out the rights to grind, the mills. The mills would grind grains. The grains were chametz. So he says you can't do it because first of all it's davar shalei b'laylam. Because they're not, it's only, the people only going to come grind later. And second of all, even if davar shalei b'laylam, the mechira works, is only with davar sheikah, the davar kayim. Right now, there is something, the davar shalei b'laylam the mechira will only kick in at the time that something will become chametz. So he's going to grind the grains. When will the mechira be chal? On Tuesday, when the guy, on Thursday, when the guy will show up to grind. But it's not going to be chal on Erev Yom Tov when nobody's coming to grind. So therefore, even if it's davar shalei b'laylam, it's still not, the mechira is not going to be chal till later. So you're receiving schar from Yisurei Hana. So therefore, the mechira does not work before. And the Tzemach Tzedek says both issues of the Taz are not relevant. First of all, the mashka is in existence, not davar shalei b'laylam. The mashka is here. It's visible. You can walk into the warehouse and you'll see it there. And therefore, the mashke is sold to the guy right away. It's not a davar shalei b'laylam. And when is it sold to the guy? At the time when you're able to when it's still mutter to eat it on Erev Pesach, because it's still visible over there. The Tzemach Tzedek doesn't go into discussing. With this, he's answering why the mechira is chal right away, not like by the Taz, the mechira is only chal later. The Tzemach Tzedek doesn't discuss yet the reason why it's not considered davar shalei b'laylam. But on the again, the Tzemach Tzedek wrote afterwards a sofas and the tshuvas. Over here, the Tzemach Tzedek added, being that it's obvious that the mashke that is right now here is a davar sheba'laylam, and it's b'reshusay, and therefore on the mashke there's no question it's not davar sheba'laylam. On the fact that you're selling it now for a higher price, on that profit, that is something which you could say is davar sheba'laylam. That extra profit is davar sheba'laylam. But in this sale, when you're selling the actual mashke, and you're selling the permit, and you're renting out the room, altogether there is one element which is b'laylam, which is the actual mashke. The only thing which is lay b'laylam is the rights, the permit to rent, the permit that you're renting out to him, that he could sell it for $10 a bottle. So therefore, that does work, because it's attached to a davar sheba'laylam, and it's being sold as a package. And the mechira starts from now, together with the whole package. The davar shalei b'laylam gets attached to the davar shalei b'laylam, and it's chal now because everything is be'ein, and therefore it's fine. That's what the Tzemach Tzedek wrote in Ksavet Kodesh on the side, and the Tzemach Tzedek crossed it out. But that,
The heart only work if the thing they don't produce.
It's not for producing. They would sell. They were not producers. They could. If it was producing, it's a whole different problem. However, we still have somewhat of an element of having an oil from chametz over here. Because, so if you have the element of Hana, you could always say that since the permit was sold also for Pesach, so the Yid is not able to have Hana from Chametz on Pesach. He's not able to sell it. He's profiting all before, and therefore it is fine. And Bechlal, he says, this is all for entering the Taz. According to the Magen Avram, Lechatchila, you could sell a permit. So Bechlal, we don't have to worry about it. And the reason is, the Chemed Moshe says, an interesting reason. How did you acquire this permit? Right? How did you acquire it? You acquired it by paying for it, but you pay for something. This permit is a paper. The same way you acquired it, you could sell it. You can't have that one. It's derech mechirase. The same way you acquired it, you could also sell it. So it's not. So that's the Chemed Moshe says. You don't have to worry about the permit being a davar shalei b'alaylam. The next reason Tzemach Tzedek brings is in Ois Zayin. It's compared to siluk when you remove yourself from something you're entitled to. There's a whole discussion if you're able to be misalik, if a husband's not able to be misalik atzim mirushas ishtay. Either it's because it's a masal davar shekos b'tayra, or because it's davar even though it might be it's davar shlei b'laylam, whatever it is. The only way it works is if it's a proper kinyan is done and there's a commitment to pay back the yerusha to the yarshim. Then you could say that the mechira is chal. But otherwise, a siluk that is not done with actual for consideration, with actual payment attached to it, and as something which is bala olam has no power. So therefore, but over here it does work, because siluk would work. Why? Because if you sell it to the guy, let's say the derech mechira, so even if you're going to say that the sale is not fully because davar shlei b'la olam, at least you can masalik yourself from it. You remove yourself from it. By this sale, you're removing yourself from it, and you're not making any profit off this idea. Yeah, this is essentially the main part of this tshuva. Now, in the Madurakam of this tshuva, which is on page 152, at the end, towards the end of it, page 152, over there it gives more of a practical outline how this is done. And with that, we're going to pretty much conclude. That he sell the permits together at the same exact time as selling the mashke. And over here, the Tzemach Tzedek adds, Yifchoy sloi echad rubu mikol hin. You're like deducting, like the Sheareit Yehuda says, you're deducting from each, from the full price, you're deducting $1 of each bottle, of each liter. And you don't sell it mamash from Erev Pesach to Mitzvah Pesach, you sell it from Yud Beis Nissen, and you give him enough time to sell it. And then it works either because of siluk, like we said before, or because you gave him the rights to sell, even if the mechira didn't work for the permit, at least it worked as a matana. But this will only work for what was sold on Pesach, that you could do that. But anything which is sold not on Pesach, you have to sell it to him at a much cheaper price. That means you're renting him out the permit for 10 days, 9 days. During those 9 days, you could sell it to him for 9 rubles. Instead of 10 rubles, you sell it to him for 9 rubles, $1, 1 ruble less for each bottle. But anything which is sold after Pesach, once you already got back your permit and you're selling, or sold before Pesach, when you still had your permit, how can you sell it to him for 9 rubles? You have a right to sell then. So you have to sell it to him at the cheapest price. Huh? On Pesach, you rented out to him you gave him the permit. You had no way of selling it anymore. You sold it to him before Pesach for 9 ruble a bottle, so he could sell it for 10 ruble a bottle. So now what happened over here? He gave him the permit. I'm the seller, I can't sell anymore with a permit. The guy could sell with the permit. So then I can sell to him at a higher price, because then I'm selling him the mashka, and I'm giving him the place, and I'm selling him the permit, renting him out the permit. And the permit works either medin siluk or medin matana, whichever way you're going to work, because maybe his sale didn't actually kick in. But after Pesach is over, I retrieve my permit. I'm back to selling. And if the guy is now going to want to sell, I can't sell it to him for 9 rubles, the same thing, because the guy doesn't have the rights, doesn't have the permit anymore. The only person who has the permit is me. So if I'm going to say I'm selling it to him for 9 rubles a bottle, so he could sell it at 10, it's not going to work, because I have the permit, not him. The only way it's going to work is if I sell it to him much cheaper and tell him go sell it outside. And in the Madura Bas, in the Madura Kamavi, the Tzemach Tzedek goes into the whole discussion that a separate thing. There was he says that also the people who sell the pubs also have to sell their chametz direct to a goy, and on that comes what the Rav asked. That's in Siman Peivav, I think Peizayin, over there. That the other Rav came and asked that the Bepoil, there's a whole discussion if the pub owners are considered owners, because really they're only buying it on credit, and the main guy, the wholesaler, comes in and measures how much he sold, and the Rav gives like a bunch of answers why, a bunch of reasons why you don't have to. Tzemach Tzedek says it's mamish like a purchaser. It's mamish considered a purchaser. You can't say that it belongs to him. They can't rely on the mechira of the wholesaler. And the Alter Rebbe also in Siman Daled, which is also in your book, I'm not going to go into it now, also says that it's pretty clear that the pub owners have to sell their chametz independently. Yeah, but so now, how do you sell a business? So if there's a permit involved, whether it is a license to sell mashke, or if you have a business like almost every business you have to have, you have a nursing home, only specific people can have a permit to operate it, and all these kinds of things. And when you sell it, you have to make an inventory. All right, today everything's computerized. You print out the inventory for everything, and you see how much there is. You sell it to the guy for a price that's a little bit lower than your retail price. And then you see how much is sold after Pesach, and you take from the net profit, he'll get the real profits from everything else. And if he doesn't do it like that at the end, he doesn't want to go through the sale and buy and everything else, then he goes back as long as he gets a little bit of schar tircha. But that shtar is going to be customized to every place. That's l'chatchila the best way to do it. But you have to make sure the permit is there also, and that the price is not the full wholesale price, but a little bit below the wholesale price. But it can't be too low, below the retail price. But it can't be too low, because if it's too low, it's not really a mechira. That's the real way it should have been done. But today, the way people do it, they just do a different, similar shtar, and they just rent out the property to a guy, and they sell it together with a general mechiras chametz. But really, if it's to be done right, it should be done with the understanding that the prices are going to be, let's say, at whatever, a 5% discount, 5% less than the on everything. The whole schayra that's chametz is going to be sold to the guy at 10% below retail, and then he's going to profit that 10% gap from whatever is sold in the business on Yom Tov. And that is the way. So, but now, if you do a full shtar, a lot of times people have a full shtar of Shabbos and of Shabbos and Yom Tov, and they don't only give out. They don't only do for chametz. They do for let's say they have an open business for the whole nursing home. It has to be open 24/7. They do a full shtar in the beginning of the year with a guy that they rent, that he's a shutef 20% or whatever it is and everything. So then over there, it's not enough to rely on that. They have to make sure they also do mechiras chametz. You could do it to the same guy. That not only is he a full owner of the property during that time, and he leases all the equipment, he also purchases all the chametz at a full price minus a small percentage from the guy, from the owner, and then he could make profit off it afterwards, and then you'd always do it. You have it like the Alter Rebbe says, you have a few days after the shtar, after Pesach, to make a cheshbon. And if the guy doesn't want to make the cheshbon, then everything goes back and he makes a few dollars profit for it. With that, we conclude the shiurim on Mechiras Chametz.